Hello, hello.
Hello, hello,
Hello, hello,
hello.
hello.
How are you doing, Zach?
How is Zach? I'm doing great, man. How
Doing
are you?
awesome. Yeah,
Nice.
good to be back on another podcast. And
Yes.
yeah, we are also exploring this new tool and the shenanigans of a new tool.
Yes. It's like testing something in production.
Speaking of production,
Oh, it's cool.
how
Yeah. So how's everything?
good? Going good. Yeah, we are also prepping up for our community day in May, so things happening there. And this weekend is a festive weekend, right? So yeah,
Yes.
how's it going for you?
Yes. So, oh yeah. So yeah. In Wellington, there's a annual event called Cuba Duba. It's happening today. So it's a party town today. It's Wellington, entire Wellington is kind of a party, and so much food, amazing music. It's kind of a festival. So yeah, it's nice. And yes, regarding Community Day, we already finalized our dates and venues. So it's going to happen on 18th of September this year. So it's a spring in Wellington, but in New Zealand. But it's a very nice time to do host the
Awesome,
event.
awesome. Yeah, weird that on a party night you're here on a podcast.
Yeah, see how dedicated I am.
Hmm. Did serverless intrigue your interest?
Yes, actually, like all my weekends, I now work. I play around with serverless stuff, new things, and writing a lot of Lambda functions and try to automate things. It's super exciting. I'm trying to use Lambda to automate like ops work,
Uh-huh.
which is really amazing. Like some of the out of the box things. Yeah, I'm planning to write some blog articles. Yes.
Okay, so speaking of Lambda functions, have you used step functions?
Yeah,
What do you use it for?
some automations, I would say, and I have done some kind of garage projects, like build some automations and my own. And yeah, at work we have I think some step functions, not in our team, but some other teams. Yes. For example, like automating my bakings. So yeah.
Interesting. Did you know that step functions has something called as JSONata or JSON path?
Is that English or Greek?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Okay.
I've heard about it. Obviously, I have heard about it, but I never been like gone through and check that out like in detail.
Okay. So what you were ideally using is something called as JSON path. So you know that you had to go traverse the whole thing with defining the path for results and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And JSON as an object is crazy.
Yes. Yeah, you're talking to a YAML person?
Interesting. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of information for you because
Nice.
we're talking only JSON today, no YAMLs.
Cool.
Yeah, in case somebody is watching, which team are you on, JSON or YAML team?
Yes, please vote. Team Zach, Team Jones. Or Team Zach with C H or Zach with C K. YAML or Jason.
I see Bhavesh is here. He was here on our last stream as well. So hey
Hello,
Bhavesh.
Bhavesh.
So Bhavesh, you can let us know in the chat here. Team Jason or Team YAML? Okay, going back to JSONata. Um one problem that we always had with step functions is working with JSONs and JSON paths. Be it when you're writing a lot of intrinsic functions. Have you used intrinsic functions?
No.
No? Okay. Uh, but you did use a lot of SDK integrations, right?
Yes.
So when you're doing SDK integrations, maybe you get a response, you have to parse them, you have to do some data manipulation, you have to do some string work or work with arrays or whatnot. Intrinsic functions is the way to do it when you're using JSON path, the default way of how you typically build until last reinvent, right? Because yes, last reinvent is when JSON.
I love when you said like typically, but until last reinvent.
Yeah. So until last reinvent, that's how you were doing it. And at reinvent or pre-invent, something called JSONata was launched, where you could be building a lot of things with JSON-based querying. JSONata is a query language that's available already. Let me get my screen up. Okay. Yeah, JSONata, this is the docs of JSONata, where it's basically a query language and can help you work with complex JSON objects in terms of when you're trying to build step functions. It at times could be complex. At times you could be working with even nested step functions, state machines, right? And you may have to pass a lot of data across states or across tasks. And especially when you're doing it, parsing JSON objects is a pain, right? So JSONata is basically a lightweight query language which can help you work or query different JSON objects. It also comes with different functions available. So the intrinsic functions that step functions provided, to a part of it is available on JSONata. And there are certain features that step function supports natively that's available on JSONata. There are certain others that are not completely there today. But when you're talking about JSONata, the best part about it is, imagine you have an object like this. Zoom in,
Yes.
zoom in. Oh, yes.
Consider, yeah. I was kind of like, oh, how can I read this text? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And you see, it's a crazy JSON object.
Yes.
JSONata has features where it has functions to get summation of values. So in case you want to get the sum of all the all the products in that order, you could just use sum, navigate it across the JSON object. You could even do operations on the values directly. But coming back to step functions context, if you would want to do this, the way how you'd have to do is you would have to send this data to a Lambda function. And Lambda function would be basically doing this math operation. So as much as this is an exciting announcement for me, it's also a lot of telling, hey, you don't need to use Lambda functions for something as simple as these, right? Step functions can handle it for you. So when you want to navigate, so say for example, you want to get the count of orders that's there. So what you could do is account, order, product, that. Yep. So you can see that the number of products that's available in the order is there. You could even do all kinds of JSON parsing and do certain functions as well. Coming back to functions, JSONata has a bunch of them available. So all of this, whether you're working with strings or arrays, or even things with complex JSON objects. It's available. So you want to do pathway to operations, or you want to do numeric operations, like the one I was just showing you. You could directly do it. So say, for example, you want to order things, you want to sort a certain objects, or if you want to do comparison between objects, all of this, what you have to do it in step functions, you have to use dedicated intrinsic functions that's there. Well, to most of it, it was possible, but if it is not, the only option was invoke lambda function to get it done.
Yeah, we can't forget lambda functions. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, like you say, go back to basics. In the serverless world, go back to basics is go back to lambda function. Not just these, but especially when you're working with complex state machines and you want to do all of these, maybe you want to work on certain intrinsic functions, you would have to use a lot of parse states. And if you are not aware about how step function pricing works, there's also a pricing for every state transition, right? So the more parse states you add, the more cost you may incur because of your step function execution. All of this is being addressed with JSONata. So let's get back to another topic with step functions, where just 2-3 weeks back, step functions announced that you could not only use the Workflow Studio on the AWS console, like go into your browser, log into AWS console, and navigate to step functions, open a state machine, create a new state machine, whatnot. Then, ta-da, there is a Workflow Studio, which you could use all drag and drop features available on it. You could even define certain properties. You could even test certain states, all of that on your AWS console. And that's what I'm talking about on a browser, right? But step functions went ahead a little. I think we did a session on the infrastructure composer or the application composer called
Application compose, right? Like when they announced initially.
Yes. So you remember application composer, you had to have a YAML or a JSON template, and that loads the application composer or infrastructure composer, what it's called today. And from that, you navigate into Workflow Studio locally on your IDE, right? But now, step functions is available as part of the AWS toolkit, the extension that you get on VS Code or any of the IDEs. I think it's only supported on VS Code at this moment. So what it does is it locally loads this Workflow Studio if it detects ASL file in your working directory. So let's get into VS Code. And let me say, create a file, state machine.
While you're writing, so this is the official announcement. You can see the QR code. You try.
Did you see that? Did you see that?
Yes, I love that.
Did you see that?
We are testing on production. Nice, I love it.
Yes. So it just detected that I have a state machine JSON, the ASL Amazon States language JSON available. And what it did is it immediately loaded the Workflow Studio. What it does is it's a blank canvas. So it's telling me, hey, now you got to start over. And to start over, we were talking about JSONata and JSON path. Like you see now, it's the recommended is JSONata because that's really powerful when you compare it to JSON path. So let's go ahead and create with JSONata. First off, you could see all the features that's available. All the features that's available on your Workflow Studio on the console is also available on your IDE. Now, Zach, so I was playing around with one of the templates that Step Function provides, and we are building that locally, but it's already deployed on my AWS account, so we can see the executions right from there. So to begin with, what the template basically does is it has certain patterns where you can pass data. And this is what I was talking when you had to make certain initialization, you had to create pass data, which kind of does just data manipulation and then pass it on, nothing with respect to an SDK integration with AWS or an external HTTP endpoint, nothing of those sorts. And, along with JSONata, step functions also launched something called as variables, because before, when you had a ton of information that has to be passed along multiple states, the way you would do it is result path, add everything to result path and query it from the result path. The data transfer with respect to this across different state machines has a limit. I think it's 100 KB or 1 MB, something like that. I forgot the limit, but yeah, there is a data limit across the state machine transfers. So whenever you want to do it, you always encounter these issues where you had a huge JSON object, want to pass it, say for an example, uh, just for an instance, you have some value in the first state, which is going to be used only in the third state. You had to pass it across the first, the second, and the third. Um, and it's unnecessarily being there in the second state, where you don't have to really use it, but you're also transferring data. Now what you could do is you can assign variables. And here's one other thing that I really loved about console. This is the first time that I've seen it on AWS console, so kind of geeking around. Ta-da! Whenever you see an info, it used to be the right panel opening out and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
text, right? But this is the very first time that AWS did something like this, and
It's kind of a pop-up.
yeah.
Oh,
So,
that is really good because let's say you're traveling and you're using a single screen, uh, a 14-inch MacBook, right? Like or anything. So having this, it's really easy to read. Otherwise, you have to move your split the screen. Now, it's very hard. Yeah, this is nice.
yep. So
I'm seeing this first time.
exactly, and I was initially like, I'm like, wow, does console have this thing? uh, so this is exactly how variables work. So you have results from either the first step or the second step or nth step. You assign it to that data, and that's available across the workflow, and you could reference them anywhere that you're been using and fetch data. So you're not passing on data to each state, but instead you're assigning it to a specific variable that could be used across the state machine. So concepts of Whoops telling it, okay, make it a global variable and then use it across. So what we'll be doing now is that we will assign a few variables in that state machine. So JSON object, and we say we have a counter. And now we use something called JSONata. Okay, this has to be in the code. So I was talking about, see, if it's a JSONata expression and it detects that it's a JSONata expression, what it does is it gives you an editor for the expression itself where you can type it out and save it. So
Love it.
$count. And in case if you're still worrying, okay, I don't know what are the functions available.
Wow. This is another level, man.
I know the step function Steam takes developer experience seriously, and this you can literally see that. We'll be using something called prompts, so just adding this. where you're telling, okay, get me the count of this array that's available in the input prompts and take a count of it. Ta-da! So apart from this, we also have few other variables that we'll just assign. So conversation history, it's an array, and
Can you open the prompt now, or just
which prompt?
the prompt we got earlier?
This one?
The query editor, like.
Okay. In a moment.
Cool.
So JSONata expressions come with this, and as soon as
Okay.
it identifies that it's a JSONata expression, the option to edit the prompt is available. Here's
Nice.
another JSONata function. So reverse array. So it says, okay, what's the array? I know it states, input, and prompts. So just reverse the array. That's it. Now, when we have assigned these variables, the next thing that state machine, what it does is it uses the counter. So basically, it's invoking Bedrock, one of the models of Bedrock, and trying to get some text generated iteratively, and we're using that counter for that, and until it's greater than 0, it keeps executing like that. So you see, you can make you can do branching, because of you could do a conditional check with step functions choice that's there already, and even when you're defining rules, you can define the state machine. You can even define the JSONata expressions. So you can see already it's a JSONata expression. I just copied it off, telling that $counter, which is basically the variable that we assigned in pass as 3. If it is greater than 0, go do this. Otherwise, it defaults to something else. So next state, let me add Bedrock in work model, and success. So basically what it does is checks the counter. If it is greater than 0, invoke Bedrock. If it is 0, just end the execution. Now that we have the Bedrock state available, we can also say, don't just end the workflow, but you could go back to the choice. So in a loop, iteratively check if, when it comes to Bedrock, you could go back there, edit the values of the variable, and send it back to choice, and check the condition, come back in, or end the execution. More of those sorts. So copying the model name, and the prompt that it uses. So basically what we're doing is the conversation history that we used in the variable, as again referring that, getting the previous variable, and then appending. So all of this is string concatenation. So you're concatenating the string, adding the counter, and then going across. After that, what you could do is variables, and we will make some changes in the variables again, because whenever you're working with variables, you may have to also not just extract data, get the data, you may have to write back the data as well, right, to those variables. So reassigning those variables by doing a math operation right here, and also um, doing a array append, right? So all of this is native JSONata features, nothing on the step functions side. So that's how simple it is to work with it. Imagine if it was JSON path, you had to use an intrinsic function, and intrinsic function has certain limitations, so you have to work around all of those things. Worst case scenario, end up in a lambda function. So now that you have designed all of these things, right? And this we're doing right at the state machine level. So when you go back and let's say save it, I go back into my file, say open to the side, it has generated the complete ASL JSON. How cool is that? So you can see the complete state machine definition that's there, and whatever the states that are there, along with the JSONata expressions, the conditions that it holds, even the variables and its assignment. So whenever you're using in ASL, using variables, you use assign to work with any variable assignments. And whenever you're referencing them, you just use $, the variable names. Of course, there are certain reserved keywords, like always. States is one, but there are a few as well. Now that this is done, what you could do is, from your local machine, you could have your infrastructure as code, be it the SAM or CDK.
Oh, very friend Sam. Yes.
So you could use that and deploy your Lambda function, your step function. Why did I say that? Lambda function.
Yeah. Why?
So you could deploy your step function using the standard way of using SAM, CDK, or Terraform. Or there are too many IAC tools, I guess. Not just editing them, but step functions announce something called as test state. I think we did a podcast on test state, Zach, a while ago, but yes. So you could even use test state on your IDE to test them out.
Oh, you don't have to go to the browser to do that.
Yep.
Cool.
And since my VS Code is using my AWS credentials, when I go to test state for Bedrock, Bedrock is, again, an SDK integration. So it requires an IAM role, and I can even select my IAM role right at my IDE because it's using my AWS credentials.
Because you're already authenticated and you're authorized,
Yep.
you can list all these things. Nice.
Yep. So enough about IDE and VS Code. Let's see what this model does in production. So I was testing it out a few minutes back. And basically what we're doing is we're giving a series of prompts telling, hey, give me a random city name, a non-fictitious city, and all of these things, and then telling me, describe the city, and then some local cuisines. Like, both of us are foodies here, so yes, why not a local cuisine? Let's say start execution.
Wellington.
Let's see what it says. So, okay. Close.
Wow, so close. Sydney.
Close. Okay, so now that the model was, the state machine was able to invoke the model and make a few iterative invocations to it and all of that, you can see the complete output is available. State, yeah. So you can see that it did multiple iterations where it said Sydney is one of the largest cities, all of that, and I see prawns somewhere here. So it even got the
We have nice
localization
seafood, trust me.
from
Yes, I
Sydney.
agree with you. Yes.
Now coming back to certain features about step functions. So you can see that whenever the execution happens, you can get insights about the execution stepwise. Like it was already there with JSON path also. But now with JSONata and variables, what we could also see is the details of the variables. So you can see the first state. You can even see that, okay, when the state machine was executed, the values were assigned. So you can even say, okay, just show me the value or even show me the assignment. So in case you want to look at the JSONata expression, you can navigate across it. And when you're trying to work with these, you can even copy these values. So say, for example, I copy this. The counter is 3, the history is empty. Let me say, go back into my IDE, test it, counter 3, and um, so you can paste the whole thing and test them out. So copying these values is easily available, and working with them even on your local IDE is possible. Now that the variables are assigned, what you could do is you could navigate it across, telling, okay, my state machine went into has prompt or not, and then because the counter is greater than 3, went into invoke model, and whenever it went to invoke model, it worked around with variables. So you can see that the counter is 0 because at the last iteration, the counter value was changed to 0. Otherwise, you could also see the complete variables values that was there before. And when you go back into prompt, all of the values are available and you can see them in action. That's how, it maintains a history of each execution and the values that it holds. Of course, if you want to see the values, you may have to go look deeper into it, deeper into the execution details to see what the value was and what was the value changed. So say the first prompt executed told it Sydney, and state machine execute. Yeah. So when the state machine exited, the assigned value was changed to 2. So it decreased the count. Now, the second prompt was basically tell me about Sydney a little. And what it did was it added the response from the previous prompts into conversation history and decremented the counter. At the next execution, where it told us about the prawns from Sydney and also a few other things, but prawns caught my eye. So you can see that it captured the complete history, made the counter a 0, and the next time the state machine executed, it gave us the complete, it went back to the choice state, and because the counter was 0, it didn't go into the invoke model state, but instead went into success and ended the execution. Yeah, that's how simple and easy and effective using JSONata with variables is.
Nice. I was thinking, as I told you in the beginning, that I was playing around with a lot of serverless these days.
Mm-hmm.
So I have something to try it out.
Mm-hmm. With JSONata.
Yes.
And now it's not Greek for you.
Little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding.
Yeah, you could still go back in and say edit and say dollar, not Greek and Latin.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So
So
John telling it's nice. Wow.
nice. Thank you. If you have any questions, we can check that out.
So Bhavesh or John or anyone who's watching us, if you have any questions, drop them out. And yeah,
Yeah. And I will share those blogs again. If you don't mistake, scan it.
yeah, and I think one of the links also has a video of our very own Eric Johnson, the DA from
Yeah.
AWS, talking in depth about JSONata and how you could be using it. Also, when you have workflows that's using JSON path, there's a way that you could migrate it into JSONata. So if you want to go back and update your state machines again, you could do it with JSONata.
Cool. Nice. Something I really enjoyed because always I talk about containers or something else, right? Well, something new.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, while you're doing the session, I was taking some notes to check later. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
super impressive. And already I was thinking about a couple of projects that I can work on using this. Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, that's I mean that's how easy a step function was when you wanted to do a lot of orchestration work. But now with JSONata, it's just elevated the experience.
Yes, and the best part, you can make it more simpler. Like I know you can do certain things with Lambda functions, but now you don't have to depend on a Lambda. Like because again, it's another management thing, right? Like you have to upgrade the Python packages or any other languages. You have to keep the Lambda functions up to date, and you don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think John has a question around. Okay, this was just an example that we spoke about, but what are the good examples that you could use? JSONata and step functions. So step functions, when we talk about it, we could be using it for various tasks or series of tasks that requires orchestration, especially when you want to say, hey, I have a user sign up that's been done, and when the user sign up is done, I want to send the person some subscription links to Stripe or Razorpay or whatnot, and wait for the Razorpay to complete the payment, come back in with the status. So you can create that web experience where state machines can make API calls to your third-party um, payment gateways and check for those statuses, and then resume up after the complete execution. That is one. You could also, not just for the application level, but like Zach was mentioning about DevOps
Operation.
and maintaining the sanity of your infrastructure, you could use step functions for it. And especially when you're doing a lot of these things, you have data that's being moving across different states. This is exactly where, in case you don't want certain data to be manually be sent across different states, you could use variables where you could assign it in one place and use it at n number of state steps instead of just passing it along. The other way is JSONata expressions and the functions that it has, be it the math operations that we just saw, or the string operations or array operations that it has. When you're working with data, you may have to use these, and there are intrinsic functions available today, but not to a full capacity. This is exactly where you revert back into a Lambda function or the compute where you have more control. In these states, JSONata is really good and can help you work with those data natively on the step function environment instead of going into another compute layer. So some of the examples could be something like user sign up, data transfers. It could even be event-driven architectures where you have data that's been written into your DynamoDB, could invoke the state machine with the DynamoDB streams and event bridge events. There could be events from different other AWS services that you could also leverage with Event Bridge in conjunction, and invoke the state machine to execute based on the events. So all of that is a possibility. And I mean, the list is long, so yes.
Yeah. Nice. Any questions? Anything else? Seems like nope.
I think I had
I'm
a.
sure I can hear the parties from here, so I'm keep muting my mic.
Mhm. I thought that was a music that's being played. No.
Yeah, that's the music, and same time like I can hear from.
Hmm. So, just for John's reference, there is a whole series of blogs that I wrote for about step functions. So you could use that. Where I talk about different use cases, even things with respect to step functions, native features, be it intrinsic functions, be it the HTTP invocation, and also a lot of things with respect to intrinsic functions and SDK integrations across multiple AWS services. So with SDK integrations, there is like literally a ton of AWS services, like almost every AWS service, along with its APIs that you could integrate directly from step functions.
So there's a link already. John, you can scan the QR code.
There is another question, John.
Can you switch back and forth? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Can you switch back and forth from JSONata and the previous?
I'm not sure if you could switch back, but you could certainly move from JSON path to JSONata. I don't know the reverse if it's possible or not.
Thank you, Jones. Nice. I think we're on time. It's a good stuff. I really enjoyed personally and learned a lot. Took a lot of notes. Maybe I'll have a look tomorrow.
Awesome. So you have some Sunday plans with step functions.
Yes. Before that, I have some EK stuff, but yes, after that.
What takes priority, EKS or step functions?
Again, like it's JSON and YAML. Yeah. Oh.
I don't have my reaction set. Damn.
Cool. So thank you, everyone. We are already planned our next session, which is really exciting one, and we are going to have a really, really special guest. So we'll keep you all updated. And we're also super excited about that session. And not only one session, actually, we're expecting a couple of sessions. We have already booked with amazing, cool guests. So yeah, and take care. And thanks again, John. Yes. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to John's via LinkedIn or comment on the post. So John can come back and Jones can reply you back with any answers. Cool.
Awesome.
All right then.
Exciting stuff's coming out. I know the
Yep.
Kubernetes guy is excited, as well as me, because we're talking about Kubernetes the next time.
Yes. I'm slightly turning Jones into be a Kubernetes guy now. And I'm going to the other side. That's really cool. Why not?
Let's turn the tables.
All good then. We'll see you again with another episode of the Zach Show. Take care.
So stay tuned. Until then, see you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.